about my home state. What's up, YouTube? Brooksy 2010 here, and yes, a video about not moving to South Carolina. Now, for those of you who don't know, I have been living here my whole life, and somebody made a video about that. And well, what does a South Carolinian have to say about it? Well, that's why I'm reacting. Now, before I start, remember to like, subscribe, and comment below what state you're watching this in and what you think is the best part about living in it and what you think is the worst part about living in it. Well, since I have been living in South Carolina my whole life, I think the best part about my home state is the beaches. And if I lived in another state with beaches, I could pretty much say the same thing. Anyway, I think the worst part is the hurricanes, but that could be any other state. Now, without further ado, let's get started.
South Carolina is a beautiful state that is well known for its rich history, southern charm, and stunning natural beauty. But there are also a few cons of living here.
Every state has its pros and cons.
And I'm going to give you my 12 reasons to avoid the Palmetto State. Just to be clear, I love it here and I'm not going anywhere. And I still think
Me
it's one
too.
of the best places in the country to live. But it's not for everyone. Occasional severe weather, including hurricanes, tornadoes, and thunderstorms.
Ooh.
When you move to South Carolina, especially near the coast, you will eventually be affected by hurricanes.
I made a video, there was actually Helen. It didn't affect my area, but it did affect some of you guys who maybe live along the border. I hope you're okay, and if you still don't have power, it's restored soon, and if you do, comment below.
To give you an example.
Before Idalia came to my area, I actually made a video about a rant on power outages because of, well, hurricanes sometimes knock power out to my house.
I've lived in Charleston for about 6 years. For the first 2 years that I lived here, we had a hurricane evacuation both of those years. Charleston was not hit directly by either of those hurricanes, but we were
in my... Florence hit my hometown of Florence back in 2018, and we drove up to my grandparents' house in Pennsylvania. We'll get to why my parents actually moved down here eventually, but they moved down here all the way from Pennsylvania, and twice a year, I have to drive 10 hours to visit my grandparents. And I know I don't like being in the car that long, but once you've done it your whole life, you've pretty much gotten used to it. Comment below the longest amount of time you guys have been in a car.
Parts of the state were heavily affected. In 2018, Hurricane Florence made landfall.
I was just talking about it.
North Carolina and South Carolina border.
Oh, that's why my area wasn't directly affected, but we were so scarred from Matthew 2 years earlier, and I mentioned that in my power outages video, but when Matthew came to my area, you should have seen the really bad damage. My house, I lost power for 4 days.
Aside from the recent hurricanes in South Carolina, I still hear stories about Hurricane Hugo over 30 years later.
Someone told me they lost power for 3 months.
But it made landfall as a Category 4 hurricane in 1989. You do get advanced warning when a hurricane is going to hit. When we recently evacuated out of Charleston, my wife and I just took a trip to Charlotte, North Carolina for a couple of days, which is only a few hours away. We made a little vacation out of it. A lot of people that evacuate go to much closer cities like Columbia or Greenville. These cities in South Carolina that are more inland will not be as affected by hurricanes.
They were more affected by Helen than the coastal areas.
We also have the possibility of tornadoes in South Carolina.
What?
We don't get as many tornadoes here.
I've lived here my whole life, and I've never seen a tornado.
I'm from Montana, and we had almost no tornadoes in that area. So I definitely consider this a con of living here. There are also very few homes in the Charleston area that have an underground basement to take shelter in. But there are some options for an above-ground tornado shelter if you want to install.
My mom told me that the soil is too in the south is too sandy for basements.
There are certain times of the year during the summer where it seems like we have a thunderstorm and heavy rain every day. In
I'm pretty sure a lot of states get thunderstorms in the summer.
So this is also something for you to consider, especially if you have pets that are afraid of loud noises.
I do know somebody who is afraid of thunderstorms. Sometimes it storms late at night, and I actually know people who can sleep through it, but I have trouble sleeping through it.
Heat and humidity.
Ooh, you could say that's another thing you could say for any state in the South.
It doesn't matter which part of
But
South Carolina that you live, you're going to be
at
affected by
least with
heat.
Arizona, it's dry hot. If you guys are watching it in Arizona, comment below if that heat is any worse than South Carolina heat.
In my
But
opinion, the
at
summer
least
months
you
are
guys
the
have
worst months of
the
year
Grand
in South
Canyon.
Carolina, especially in July and August. The temperature is not that high compared to other areas. Most days are in the 80s or low 90s, but the humidity is what makes it so uncomfortable. It is very difficult to be outside during these months, but there are still some things that you can do. If you can be somewhere where you are getting a nice breeze, like the beach or Charleston Harbor, the heat is much more tolerable. We get most of our tourists during the summer months in Charleston, and a lot of these people are spending time on the beaches where there is usually a nice breeze coming from the ocean. You will also notice in Charleston a distinct home design known as the Charleston Single, with the outside porches known as piazzas. Most of these homes were built in the 17 and 1800s before there was air conditioning, and were designed and positioned to take advantage of the cool breeze coming from Charleston Harbor. A lot of people like to go boating, kayaking, or fishing during
I
the
like
summer months.
swimming,
Getting out on the water is a great way to stay cool.
but you really have to be careful of the lakes around here because they could be full of gators. But we'll get to that. Luckily, I have a swimming pool at my house, so you guys who have pools, you're lucky. But if you don't, well, keep that in mind. I try to avoid going to amusement parks in August because of the hot sun. So, if you're from Florida and watching this, imagine what it's like going to Disney World in August.
Here will have air conditioning as well, so there's still plenty to do during the summer. And I will take the hot summer months here over the long and snowy winters where I come from.
That's actually why my parents decided to move here. He mentioned the hot and the long and snowy winters. That's why my parents decided to move here. And and since Pennsylvania is landlocked, I don't even think they ever experienced any beaches before moving here. But although sometimes when I go to Pennsylvania in July, sometimes it does get pretty hot here, and I'm like, and sometimes my grandparents are like, if it gets really hot here, we shouldn't also get snow. Well, actually, it's mainly my cousins who say that, and they have a pool, and but
Insects. There are a lot of insects in South Carolina.
I think that goes with every state too.
We have large spiders, fire ants, ticks, termites, and I've even seen a praying mantis.
Praying mantises aren't
Two main
bad.
insects here are the mosquitoes and palmetto bugs.
Oh, you should see my grandmother when she comes to visit for mosquitoes.
And they can get to be very large. If you do move here, you can hire a pest control company to spray outside your home every
Although,
2
what
months.
he forgot to mention was the paper wasps. I have them in my yard, but luckily they don't become a problem unless they build nests near my
This will really
house.
help keep the insects away.
And
There
they're
are
not
also a lot of
aggressive.
mosquitoes where I live. You will definitely want to buy a good amount of bug spray. When I take my dog out on the walk, I always have mosquitoes following me during the spring and summer months. If you'd like to enjoy your outdoor space, a screened-in porch is a great option to help keep the mosquitoes.
That's why we have a gazebo on my porch. I'd show you, but it's dark outside.
Spread a potentially fatal parasite to your dogs and cats known as heartworms, and it is very important to start your animals on heartworm prevention if you move here, which is a monthly oral or topical medication. Alligators and snakes.
Ooh, that's why I said you have to be careful of lakes around here, although he's mentioning another con of every state in the South.
South Carolina's abundant wetlands, ponds, and marshes are home to a diverse range of wildlife, including alligators and snakes.
I have a funny story. There was a snake that came in my yard last year, and I've been living in my house for 14 years, and that was the first time it had ever been reported. And I didn't see it, but my grandmother did. She was outside visiting, and it was the first time she was out there. There were two snakes fighting, and she was out, and she ran inside because of her fear. And when I went out there, I was initially, I didn't have the same reaction as my grandmother, but I'm like, ooh, I sure hope it's not a cottonmouth. But luckily, it was a rat snake. Rat snakes and cottonmouths do look similar.
Poisonous, including the copperhead snake, cottonmouth.
That's what I was mentioning.
And the coral snake. But I've only seen a couple snakes since I've moved here. I do see alligators.
Wow, we've seen more alligators than snakes.
Most of the alligators that you will see are small.
I've seen more snakes than alligators. Although, when I go swimming in the lakes around here, sometimes I worry about alligators. I mean, I could be swimming in a lake with no alligators at all, and I'm like, ooh, I sure hope there aren't any aggressive gators attacking me. Although this actually brings up another funny story. One time, I went hiking with my family. This was in a forest, and there was an alligator on the bridge, and my brother was the first person to see it. I was off running with my dad, and my mom was actually kept walking, and my brother stopped, and she wanted him to keep going, and my brother was like, but what about the alligator? And luckily my mom saw it, and then when we were on our way back, we saw it. So he pretty much saved all our lives.
But every once in a while you may see a larger gator. Alligators are a lot faster than they look, and in some rare cases, they may try to eat your dog while you walk them. So keep a safe.
When we were on the way back, we actually did see somebody walking their dog, and we warned them about it. There have actually been cases of pet owners getting killed trying to save their dogs from alligators when they were trying to get
It is very rare for
eaten.
an alligator to attack a human, but it
Oh, good.
does happen. Most of the time, if you do not bother them, they will not bother you. One of my favorite places to visit near Charleston is Cypress Gardens, and you can take a swamp boat ride there, and there's a good chance you will see some wild alligators. They also have a couple of large alligators in captivity. Tourism. South Carolina has multiple
If you live in a state that doesn't get a lot of tourists, comment below if it feels lonely there. I go to Myrtle Beach a lot, and I've met people from all over the country there. I've even met one person from Canada, and I've been impressed by the amount of driving they've done there. Some people have driven like 20 hours.
Tourism supports the local economies, but if you're going to move to one of these areas, keep in mind that there may be a lot of vehicle traffic, foot traffic, and long lines at some restaurants. In Charleston, you also have tourists taking horse carriage tours in the downtown area, which slows down traffic.
I like going to one of the many water parks over there.
You will be sitting in traffic for a while if you're trying to get on and off the barrier islands. For example, Folly Beach near Charleston has one bridge to get in and out of the town.
That goes for many islands over here.
There are certain areas and beach towns in South Carolina that attract less tourists than others, and you can contact me if you'd like to discuss which options may be best for you. Traffic. I mentioned the increased traffic.
That goes more for Massachusetts than South Carolina. I mean, when you think of Massachusetts, you immediately think of reckless drivers.
South Carolina has grown rapidly, and the infrastructure for the traffic is still very limited. Public transportation in South Carolina is also somewhat limited. If you're thinking about moving to South Carolina and need to commute to work every day, rush hour traffic is likely going to slow you down, depending on your location. Sales tax. South Carolina has a relatively high sales tax compared to others.
Well, some states are higher or lower than others.
And a local sales tax is up to 3%, so a total sales tax of 9% in some areas, including Charleston. If you eat at a restaurant in Charleston, on top of that 9%, you'll be paying a 2% hospitality tax, making your total tax 11%. The liquor tax is an additional 5%, so if you order an alcoholic beverage at a restaurant, that will be taxed at a total of 16% in Charleston. The sales tax in South Carolina brings in a lot of revenue from all the tourists the state attracts. And the good news about taxes in South Carolina is if you're going to purchase a home here, it has one of the lowest property taxes in the nation for a primary residence. If you'd like to get an idea of what you'll be paying in property taxes, most counties have a tax estimator website. Select the 4% rate if you're going to be buying a primary residence, or the 6% rate if it'll be a second home. And this will give you an idea of what you will be paying for property taxes. I will put a link in the description below for the Charleston County Tax Estimator page. Small cities. I actually consider this to be a good thing.
I think it's a good thing too. Well, I've been to many big cities, and well, that actually avoids the traffic. But comment below if you think it's a good thing or a bad thing.
example, Charleston does not allow buildings taller than the tallest church steeples here, so there are no skyscrapers. Columbia does have some taller buildings, as does Myrtle Beach, so if you're looking for a big city atmosphere, these will probably be the closest cities you can find in South Carolina. Also, Rock Hill is located about 30 minutes away from Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a very nice bigger city, and one of my favorite places to visit. If you would like more information about different areas to live in South Carolina, be sure to watch my video about the 7 areas people are moving to here in South Carolina on my website at garrisoncharleston.com or my YouTube channel, and I'll put a link in the description below. Lack of seasonal changes. If you enjoy
Wow, another reason why people move here. I mean, I was just talking about how my parents moved here because they didn't like the cold winters of Pennsylvania. Actually, I mentioned how how winter weather causes accidents, and well, that's not a problem in the South. So when they moved here, I guess they decided to move here because they didn't want to have to worry about drive accidents in the winter time.
having 4 seasons every year, beautiful fall colors, and would like to have a white Christmas, South Carolina may not be a good option for you.
Well, since I'm usually at my grandparents' house around Christmas, since I'm usually in Pennsylvania around Christmas time, sometimes I do get to experience a white Christmas. Of course, that doesn't always happen, but some years it does. But 2022 Christmas is one that will never be forgotten because it was the coldest on record. But I'm getting off topic.
Along the coast. In Charleston, I've only seen the snow stick to the ground a couple of times since I've lived here, and we don't get the beautiful fall colors that you will see in some other areas.
Some in my area, some of the trees change and some of them don't, and I actually have seen snow in my area before. But usually it's not in December, and it's only once a year. In fact, the most amount of snow I've ever seen in my area was like 3 inches. And the last time it happened was back in 2019. But as you can see in this picture, it actually snowed. This is a picture of my brother in my yard when it actually snowed at my house back in 2014.
Parts of the Midlands and upstate regions near Greenville and Spartanburg will have a little bit cooler winters, and they do get some snow. So if you're looking for seasonal changes, this part of South Carolina may be a good option for you.
We're not making more wilderness. We need to keep what we have,
I'm a big beach person,
and we need
but I guess I like the beach more than the cold, but I guess that's because I'm an adult. I mean, I can't really look at the snow the same as usual. When I was a kid, I used to love going outside and playing in the snow at my grandparents' house, but now I'm more of a beach person. In fact, if I had to choose which one of my areas to live in, I'd live along the beach. But my area is right in between mountains and the beach, so my area doesn't feel too crowded or too empty. I've even met some people who've stopped here on the way to Myrtle Beach. But on to the next topic.
Pollen and allergies.
I don't have any allergies, but I do get what he's saying about the pollen. It does get really annoying when it makes a mess everywhere.
Especially during the spring.
You guys should see my yard in the springtime.
There is more visible pollen here than I've ever seen, at least for a couple weeks out of the year. Everything outside gets covered in green pollen, including your cars and patio furniture. This is a very bad time of the year for my allergies. You may also want to invest in a pressure washer for your outside space. Flooding. Another con about
Just
living
like with
in South Carolina is
hurricanes.
the potential for flooding, especially in the low country. This area gets its name because it's very low-lying land. It is flat here and sits right near sea level. As I mentioned earlier, flooding can occur during a hurricane, but we also get occasional flooding from heavy rains, especially when it rains during a high tide. A lot of these areas near water, including rivers and creeks, are more likely to flood. Certain roads on the Charleston Peninsula are prone to flooding at times as well, and sometimes the roads are so flooded that you should not be driving through them. There have been a couple times that I've seen cars attempting to drive through the high water and stone.
That's how most flood deaths
So
occur.
here, you may be required to have flood insurance, depending on where you buy. Flood insurance can vary in price from a few $100s a year to thousands of dollars per year. But flood insurance on newer homes is usually very affordable, since most homes have been elevated if necessary. Flood insurance may be very expensive on old historic homes since a lot of them have not been elevated. If you'd like to get an idea of the flood zones around here, you can.
Wow. Okay, now I'm debating. Comment below if older houses or newer houses are better. In this video, he said that that newer houses fare better in flood damage, but older houses fare better in a fire. How do you balance that out? And you guys might not know this, but when when my area got impacted by Helen, I mean, I still got the heavy rain, but my roof actually leaked. Not in this room, but it was in the bathroom, and it's because I live in an old house, and but if my house was newer, that might not have happened. So comment below if older or newer houses are better.
Look at the FEMA flood zone maps online, and I'll put a link in the description below. Flood zone X is the area least likely to flood. If you are purchasing a property, it is important.
Someone told me there is a place in my area in a flood zone.
To get an estimate for flood insurance. Some people that live in the X flood zone also get flood insurance, even though it's not required, since flooding is still a possibility everywhere in this area, especially if we get another hurricane that dumps rain on us. Low housing inventory. South Carolina has been one of the most popular states in the country to relocate in recent years, and with all the people moving here, there's still a lot of demand for housing. Median home prices in South Carolina is below the national average, but in some areas, including Charleston County, it is above the national average. And South Carolina has relatively low wages as well. The fiscal and monetary policies of the United States over the past couple of decades, with artificially low interest rates, quantitative easing, expansion of the money supply, and debt monetization, has led to the very predictable consequence of price inflation. The Federal Reserve has had to quickly raise interest rates to combat the inflation. In this higher interest rate environment, a 30-year mortgage will now be much more expensive than it was a couple of years ago. So there are a lot of people that are not going to sell their homes that otherwise may have, because if they want to move and buy another home, their mortgage payment is going to be much more expensive due to the higher interest rates. Because of this, a lot of people are just staying where they are, so the inventory of houses for sale is staying low. However, this is also happening in other areas around the country, not just South Carolina.
He finally said something about other states with South Carolina. Well, that's the end of that video, but before I end mine, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye!